My name is Lisa Nestor. I'm a second-year full-time student at Anderson. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. I also lived abroad for several years evaluating innovative technology and finance products to help the poor. And at Anderson, a lot of my work is in the area of marketing, but I have a particular passion for entrepreneurship, working with several startups and even trying to do a startup of my own. So I'd like to go ahead and get started with having each of you just do a kind of a brief introduction of yourself, and particularly surrounding kind of the ventures that you've initiated. Go ahead, Ben.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. My name is Ben. I was born in Victoria, BC, and me and some friends started this project when we were in college. It was a documentary project about things to do before you die. So we would basically made a list of things that we would always dreamed of doing, whether or not we thought they were possible or not. We just made a list of things that if we could do anything, we wanted to do. And we hit the road to accomplish the list, and then every time we crossed something off, we'd help someone that we met on the road do something that they wanted to do. So it was a 2-week project that kind of grew and grew and grew, and we would do it in the summers. We'd raise money during the school year, and long story short, we ended up, number 53 on our list was to make a TV show. We got offered a show in Canada because they saw us in the news, but we ended up turning it down because we wanted to own it and have creative control. So we cut our own pilot and moved down here and sold it to MTV. And we did 2 seasons where we were kind of like hired our own crew and were able to keep it to like the vision that we wanted to. After that, we did a book. Number 1 things on the list was to write a bestseller, so we were able to get a book to number 1 on the New York Times. And then we recently started a production company where we basically are creating unscripted and scripted TV concepts and really just like helping people, young producers that are in the same position that we were, to basically bring their projects to life and have them maintain control and hopefully some ownership so that they can actually see it through to fruition like they originally had thought. So yeah, so that's where we're based in Venice. I still work with all the boys that we started the Barry Life with. We started the production company. It's called 4 Peaks. And that's me.
Thanks, Ben.
Very cool. Hi, I'm Rosie O'Neill. I'm a 2-time UCLA alum. I went here undergrad and then business school 10 years ago. Can't believe that much time has passed. I have chosen to have a career where I think I'm going for having every kid's dream job. So I had 7 years where I was in charge of marketing for Barbie, and then I left that very fun but very corporate career to do something totally different and totally entrepreneurial in the world of candy. And so my current dream job is that I get to travel the world taste testing candy. And I've created this company where we've created this collection of really like the best and most interesting and most delicious candies from small artisan candy makers all around the world. About 2/3 of our candies you can't even get anywhere else in the US but at our stores. We launched online a couple years ago, and we just opened our first retail store about 1.5 years ago. We have 3 retail stores now in Southern California, Beverly Hills, South Coast Plaza, and the Americana in Glendale. And we'll have 10 stores by the end of the year. So we're expanding to San Francisco, Dallas, Atlanta, and New York. So it's been a wild ride, but a lot of fun. And I definitely am a big proponent of figure out whatever that thing is that doesn't even sound like work, and go do that.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, I think that there's a lot of really interesting comparisons here with Hussein as an artist, and then ourselves more in the field of media and entrepreneurship, definitely combined. So I'd like to kind of start with this idea of inspiration and understand, Hussein talked about some of the different activities that kind of inspired him as an individual, but for you both, I mean, there clearly was some point in which you had an idea, either with friends or individually. So can you talk to us kind of about how that process came about? And I think also how you made it more than just an idea. What pushed you to kind of go beyond that?
Mm-hmm. For me, the Sugarfina idea came about after seeing the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So my co-founder, who's also my fiance, he took me to see that movie on our 3rd date. And it was just, after the movie, we were like, gosh, why are there all these candy stores for kids? Why isn't there anything for grown-ups? Why isn't there anything sophisticated and gourmet there is in chocolate, but the rest of candy, gummies, licorice, marshmallows, all that, it's kind of been relegated to the gas station or to kind of these like over-the-top Disneyland type of candy stores. You know, we didn't, people always ask like, what did you know, what was your business plan and all that? We didn't have any plan. We just had an idea that we thought was fun, and we said, hey, let's try this. And we kind of started the business as a hobby. And at a certain point, really quickly, it took off, and we realized like, oh wow, this is way more than a hobby. This is actually a real business. So for me personally, that inspiration moment kind of came from that moment of going back to being a little kid and that surprise and delight that I felt. And that scene in Willy Wonka where everyone goes into the candy factory and like everything is edible, and you can eat the cups and you can eat the plants and you can lick the walls and all that. There's just this like magic of candy. And for me, that was kind of the inspiration of, wow, wouldn't it be cool to figure out what that magical feeling is for candy for grown-ups, and bring that to life. Thanks.
So I actually had a friend who out of high school started a fashion line. And he didn't have any experience in fashion. He just took out a $10,000 loan and started this really cool fashion line. And it actually gave back because his brother started this foundation online that you could like connect with nonprofits and stuff. So you'd read this, there's a code on the back of the shirt that you could put on online, and the next day a mentor would call you and be like, how do you want to change the world today? And so it happened to be a really cool clothing line as well. And that sort of triggered me because I called him. I was like, hey man, that's really cool. Can I get involved? And I started helping him out. And I ended up getting him in this blog that was like this, it was Cool Hunting or something. And I was like, wow, that was kind of easy to make that happen. And then I started thinking about like what I wanted to do. I realized I was just gravitating towards what he was doing because I thought it was really cool and inspiring. And that's when I just called my friend. I was like, we should make a movie. And we didn't know what we wanted to make the movie about. And we kept going down the traditional path of like, oh, let's do a doc about this, let's do a doc about that. And then we would lose momentum. We're like, okay, let's just make a list of everything we want to make a movie about. And we'll all go our separate ways, and we'll come back. And we were on Skype at the time because we couldn't afford to call each other across the country. And we're like, let's go around the circle and just list it out, and we'll pick one. And everyone was so excited about all the ideas. They're like, oh, that's a good one, that's a good one. And then we were like, why don't we just do all these? And that's where the list came from. And then my friend Johnny was at school in McGill, and he got assigned a poem called The Buried Life. And it spoke about these like things, basically like that your real ambitions get buried by the day-to-day. But you have these moments when you get it and you're inspired and you know what you want to do, but then it gets buried. And so we thought it was interesting that a guy 150 years ago was feeling the same way we felt now. So we're like, this is a bigger idea than us, so we called it The Buried Life. And it was really, the idea behind the project was to inspire our friends the way that my friend inspired us to start the project. Because like I think when you see people doing innovative things like you're doing, you're like, wow, I want to be a part of that, or I want to do something like that. And it was the same. We didn't really start it as a business. We just started as a passion project, and then it slowly built momentum and turned into what it was.
Wow. I think those are both really incredible stories. And so then as a follow-up question, you clearly both had these moments of inspiration that were life-changing. And you're now still in the business of needing to be inspired. I mean, essentially, in both of your roles, do you seek inspiration? Do you think it's something that you can seek? How do you continue to stay creative in your fields?
I think by collaborating with creative people.
Okay.
Like anyone that comes in that has like a really good script or a really cool idea, or like someone that's doing something really cool that we're like, we can make a really great show about this, or interesting projects. It's about, like, for us, it's working with people that are good people and are doing really, really interesting things, and that inspires you. Just like the same time when we saw my friend start a clothing line, it's just like, wow, that's so cool. I want to do something with them. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's how we.
Yeah, I love the collaboration idea. I think that's huge. I'm a big believer that inspiration can come from anywhere at any time. But you have to be open to that, and you kind of have to live your life with that mindset of kind of walking around not necessarily being distracted or absorbed in whatever, minutia of your day, but kind of have those moments where you make space for something to come along and inspire you. being an entrepreneur is really hard, and it takes a tremendous amount of time, more than anyone will ever tell you or admit to. And in the midst of that kind of crazy world of just having to kind of run everything and do everything, it's really easy to get lost and to forget that, oh yes, I need to make space for creativity. So like for me, I have to set aside a couple hours each morning where I'm exercising and I'm not thinking about work, and where I don't check my email or my phone. And I do that until about 11 o'clock. That's about as far as I can go. But that's the time for me when I can really kind of keep my mind free of all those distractions. And those are kind of when those great creative ideas come along. So you have to work for it. I think especially when you're busy and when you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't just always happen. You have to kind of make the space for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to kind of go back to some of the points you made, I think in Hussein's talk, it's clear that there were certain, isolation was one of the key words that he brought up. And, I think there's often kind of this anecdote of the plight of the artist and having to kind of lock themselves in a room and find that moment of inspiration. But it seems that both of you kind of have been more inspired by the interactions of others. Do you think that that's because of the entrepreneurial nature of your work, or do you ever feel like you have to have those moments of isolation too? And if so, can you kind of give us an example of a time that happened?
Yeah, I think it's really important to take, time for just quiet. I think that we get going so quickly that we forget to stop. And not answering emails before 11 is like a great idea. It's very tough, but like that type of thing that you actually slow down. And just for your own wellness, I think that's when you get clarity and you're able to prioritize and you become more efficient. So, even you can just like try doing that for 20 minutes in the morning. Like even when you wake up and not check your phone as soon as you get up, like that's a start. But I don't think you necessarily need to, there's sort of forced isolation to create creativity. It depends what type of person you are. For me, I work in a collaborative environment. I get inspiration off of people's energy and passion and ideas and stuff like that. And so, that is the type of thing where I get inspired. It's an injection of energy, or it's like a new idea or someone else's perspective, or something that someone's created that drives the creativity.
Do you tend to have to reflect on it, or can you just go right then in the moment? And
usually just go like, you just kind of,
for you, yeah.
It's all over the place for me. I kind of waver between these moments of kind of introversion and extroversion. I would say I'm naturally kind of a shy, more introverted person by nature, but I live a very extroverted life. So there's like this conflict within myself constantly of needing quiet time and needing alone time, and then wanting to collaborate and wanting to get out there with my team and really brainstorm and do all that fun, productive stuff. So it's all over the map. I definitely relate a little bit to, I think, what he was saying of kind of needing that space to just disconnect and kind of retreat within yourself. But I can't do that for very long. I'll go crazy. So, right afterwards, I gotta, be working with my team and really getting in there. I wanted to comment on one thing, which is, I think social media can be an amazing source of creative inspiration. I am kind of like addicted to Instagram and on there all the time. And I use that to get a lot of energy and ideas. But at the same time, it's like both a blessing and a curse. Sometimes I'll see all this really amazing creative stuff and it'll make me depressed because I'm like, God, why couldn't I get that done today? Or why couldn't I do something that cool? So I think with seeking inspiration, you have to know when you're going to a place of competitiveness versus a place of being inspired. And it's healthy to be inspired, but it starts to get unhealthy when you're comparing yourself and competing. And I find that that's when I'm actually less creative. So. Just one other thought on that.
It's a really interesting point. And you both seem relatively kind of aware of maybe the process that works best for you in terms of getting inspiration and getting ideas. Have you always been that way? Was it something that kind of just naturally evolved, or have you always kind of been checking in on yourself and thinking, is this the right process for me to kind of get to the ideas that I'm looking for?
Yeah, I think you, as you grow, you learn more about yourself, and I think that's the great part of like getting older is you just constantly are learning about who you are and what works for you. And for me, it's just always been about never knowing how to do it, but just trying it and figuring out as you go. I mean, I think a lot of people get hung up on figuring out what the plan is, and the hardest thing to do is make that first step, and all it takes is like that moment of insane bravery to do that, and then from there, you're good. You figure it out. You know, you take the second step, third step, and also just asking for help along the way, because that's how you sort of help yourself guide your next steps, is like reaching out to people and asking. So it's just been this process of trying, failing, learning about yourself, and sort of that mentality.
I would say over time, I've gotten much more comfortable with the idea of putting imperfect ideas out into the world. I'm a perfectionist, and it's a blessing and a curse. And you know, I used to always kind of overthink and overdevelop and not even consider putting something out there until it was absolutely perfect and I loved it. And as an entrepreneur, you just can't do that. The world moves too fast. You have to be throwing ideas out and iterating and learning from kind of what you get back from the imperfect ideas you put out. So over time, I think that's probably where I've developed the most as a person, is kind of letting go of that everything has to be exactly right. And trying, putting things out there before I'm even sure that it's right, and seeing what happens. And it's kind of a fun place to be, because you kind of feel like you're getting away with something a little bit. You're trying something and getting that kind of live dynamic feedback, which is pretty cool.
Has it ever been difficult though? I mean, there has to be some, I don't know, at least emotional consequences to just putting your ideas out there and getting reactions to them. I mean, has it ever been not just a productive, like iterative process, but maybe taken you a step back by getting feedback that perhaps you weren't expecting or was more negative?
Yeah, you really have to get used to feedback and you develop a pretty thick skin. I mean, I think you have to keep some of that sensitivity. That's part of what being creative and being a little bit more on the artistic and expression side. But I always joke that this is like a Taylor Swift song. There's the creators and there's the haters, and haters gonna hate, right? But you know, like those people generally, I have found, are not out there creating. And why would you even care what they think? Because they're not really putting anything out into the world themselves other than negativity. So what I value is when I put something out there and someone who is creative and who I really do respect gives me feedback. And it could be either positive or constructive, or maybe they don't like it, but they tell me why. I find that's really helpful. So I try to seek feedback from other people who are creative and whose opinions I respect, because I think they're going to be more honest, and also, you know, I value their opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So another one of the key words that Hussein brought up was transformation. And so for both of you, you know, you had these ideas, these creative ideas that you pursued, but you're not the same person now that you were when you started. So for example, with The Buried Life or 10 Things to Do Before You Die, you know, you were in college when you were there, and when that was when that initial idea came, you were young in college, which is even different. And when you kind of pursued it and it continued to grow, you may have been a different person than you were at the beginning. Does that change in perspective ever affect the creative process, or your ability to kind of, I don't know, continue to act on that creation? Does it change the process at all?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where I get to change my chair into an outfit.
I'd be
so I was gonna wait to the end.
Way.
Yes, pretty heavy. Then we can do jokes. Yeah, I think absolutely, because you think about where you are when you're in college, and as you grow, your creative process. I mean, I think it honestly just comes back to the last thing I sort of mentioned, which is about growing and getting to know yourself and what you need to basically be creative and excel and create and make things happen. And that just happens by trial and error, and by pushing yourself, and by putting yourself in positions where you're freaked out and you're scared, because that's when you learn the most about yourself. And realize what works and you push yourself. And like I think that's really, it's the hardest thing to put yourself in because it's fucking scary, but it actually is when you make, that's when you make the biggest jumps in your growth, I think. And you just find out like what you can do and then you surprise yourself. You realize that you can do it when you thought that you couldn't. And that's when, you sort of learn the most.
But did you ever feel like you were approaching your project from a different place? The passion was different,
yeah.
From one year to the next?
Yeah, totally. I mean, because it started out as just a passion project, and then it turned into, like, if we're going to do this, we need to make money, and we have to create a business. And so, your perspective changes, your priorities change, but you try and keep the core sort of values that you started with and continue to make something that's really cool and inspiring. I mean, that was for us what we wanted to do. And bring different elements to it where you can, you can basically make it broader and create new things that will bring in income and do things that you can actually create a sustainable business. And that brings in a whole new set of challenges. And so that is just changing as you go.
I have this mantra in life of you should never get comfortable, and if you're comfortable, then it's time to like make a big change. I came from the corporate world. Sugarfina was my first entrepreneurial venture, and I was really lucky to have actually a corporate job that was pretty awesome and I loved, and I was growing really fast there. And I got to what I considered the top of where I wanted to be in that job, and I remember just having a couple weeks went by where I was like, this is easy. I could kind of do this in my sleep. It doesn't feel challenging to me anymore. And that's when I knew I had to do something really different and really make a big change. And kind of like you were saying, when you're taking these risks, a lot of times you have no idea what you're doing. And I actually think that's pretty cool. There's something really awesome about having no experience in anything and being like, you know what, I'm gonna try it anyway. I'm gonna give it a shot. Maybe I'll be able to do it differently or better than someone else did it. Sugarfina has been just like literally every single day I'm doing something I've never done before. Opening a store, never done that before. Candy, never done that before. All these things, and you kind of, the thing you have to balance is censoring yourself. Like sometimes I would be like, well, I'm not an expert on this. Maybe I should ask an expert. But then what you kind of quickly realize is nobody's really an expert in anything. Anyone can do anything. And a lot of times when you don't know what you're doing, you actually look at it from a perspective that's really interesting and maybe hasn't been done before. So I always encourage people, don't overthink it. Don't try to go get like tons of advice from all these different people. Sure, it's great to collaborate and get a little bit of advice, but also just like try it and see what happens. And you might be surprised that it actually went a lot better than you thought it would.
Totally, I 100% agree. Like, you don't need to know how to do it. That's the secret. You just do it and you'll figure it out and people will help you. Like, we came down here, and I think the younger you are, the easier it is because you're more naive in a good and a bad way. But like, we came down to Hollywood. We're from like an island in Canada, and all of a sudden we had our own TV show, and we're like, no, like we're hiring our friends, and we're like not doing it unless we're executive producers, and we're gonna hire all the editors. We're gonna do all the edits. We're gonna choose the music. We're gonna do everything. And if anyone had any experience in the business, they would not even try to do that because it's so absurd to try and be like that when you come and creating like a show for a network like MTV. But we were so naive and bullheaded. We're like, no, we won't do the show then, and we just figured it out. And, it was like we pissed off a lot of people, but we ended up finding the core that we wanted to work with and created the show that we ultimately wanted to create. We would have not been able to create that show if we didn't do that, because that's not how TV's made, like, for instance, one of the things we did on the list was to break into the Playboy Mansion, and you have to clear locations before you go and shoot there. And they're like, you guys are gonna have to clear the Playboy Mansion before you go and get permission. And we're like, no, we won't, because then we won't be breaking in because they'll know we're coming. So we're gonna break in and then we'll get permission after. And they're like, first of all, you can't, like, we have to shoot an episode, so we have to get in. And we're like, well, we'll figure out a way to get in. And we like made a giant prop cake and hid in it and delivered it, and we were snuck in and we were there and they didn't even know. We had to go back and ask for permission, and they're like, no, you can't show an episode of you breaking into Hugh Hefner's house. Like, we'll sue you. And we ended up like writing a handwritten note to Hugh Hefner being like, hey, we, shot this episode and check it out. We think you'll like it, and he gave us permission. And like, this just goes completely against what every other production would do, because you can't spend that money without guaranteeing the delivery of what you're going to do. But we just cared enough, like we were like, we'll figure it out. And that came from like clearing music from bigger bands to like paying editors out of our own pocket to recut episodes that were already greenlit by MTV, and then sending them to the president and be like, yo, this episode is better, let's use this. And then we build up a rapport with them, and as you go. So it's, 100% agree.
That's really interesting. I'm having flashbacks of that episode now. I remember like thinking, are all 4 of them going to be able to get in? Because it was like,
I didn't get in.
People had different strategies. Yeah. Oh,
I dressed up like Cristiano Ronaldo and I failed.
Exactly. That's so funny.
I was like, this is not going to work. I told Johnny that like, you're dressing up like Oompa Loompas, you're getting in the bottom of a giant prop cake. And they're like, we had made like a full fake website for Cristiano Ronaldo's PR company that was in communication with the promoter. Probably shouldn't be telling this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never got in.
Oh, there you go. Well, now I bet you'd have much more luck. So.
Nope.
Okay, so, I guess we're in business school, and both of you, you're heads of companies now, but you're also in a creative business, looking for inspiration in the newest kinds of chocolate, looking for media. So going back to kind of what you were saying, how do you balance that now? How do you balance, as a business leader, wanting to manage risks and, make a profit to some extent, and also really allowing that creative process, or kind of being experimental, just trying and doing? I mean, to some extent, once you actually have a business, that has to potentially be tempered some, or I don't know, does it have to be? How do you balance it?
It's a really good question. I'm the first to admit that I have not figured it out. So, it's a constant struggle of figuring out how do you achieve that balance. I think it's so important. For us as a company, we started with just 2 people. Now we're almost at 100 people. And it's so important to me that we keep that culture of just doing it and just figure it out and make it happen, and don't overanalyze it, but try it. And, you really have to hire very, very carefully. And I actually think it's better not to hire people who are experts at whatever field it is that you're trying to do. It's so much more important to hire people who are like-minded and who have a really open mind and are go-getters and who can get on the same train with where you want to take your business. I also really love the whole idea of giving people a chance. God, I'm like spewing out the cheesy lines.
Keep it going.
I'm recording until you
No, but one of the things we do, because we have retail stores now, so we have been, hiring sales associates, like an entry-level retail job, and it's awesome. It's like the best training ground in the world, and we can very quickly identify who the superstars are, and we promote those people to come work on the corporate side of our business, and we promoted like 5 people that way. These are people who were just retail associates and who are now operating divisions of the company, and they feel so inspired because someone gave them a chance that, believe me, they're going to work twice as hard as someone who may have been doing that for 5 years, 10 years. So I think it comes down to kind of setting that culture and that vision, and then really building a team that is on the same page.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's very hard to find, I find, just good people that you really, really like and work really, really hard, and I think that even if that's just some advice that you can take away, if you're a good person with integrity and you work your ass off, you will succeed eventually. Most people just give up before, it just takes so much work, like you're saying, to create something, and I think most people give up right before they make it. And so for us, it's really about finding those people that we really love working with, because you're spending your time with them anyways, so it's like that's how you're working the majority of your life. You might as well work with people that you like. Like I work with like 3 of my best buddies, and we try and find other people that we have fun with, and then you create the best work. You know, the line between like you know, passion projects and projects that are sustainable for your business, you know, that's tougher too. And we, in the beginning when we started, we thought, okay, we should kind of have a line where we do things, you know, where we think are going to be successful and make money, and we do things that we love. And then we just found out the things that we thought were going to be successful and make money weren't, and the things that we love started working, which I know is not always the case, and it's a little idealistic to think that way, but honestly, like, it happens that way. Like, if you really love something and you go for it, because you have that energy around that project, and you enlist people and other people get excited, and those are the things that end up sort of going. So, you know, it's not always that way, and you cannot like think that that's always going to be the case, but it's worked for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really great point to take away, that sometimes everything that you think is going to be business and it's going to work for the business doesn't always end up that way. So.
Yeah, or your business doesn't end up being what you think it's going to be.
Exactly.
Like that's another big thing. You know, like most startups, they don't end up doing what they thought they were going to, and you just got to be adaptable and change as you see things that are working, and like some things hit that you didn't think would, and you're like, oh, that's what we'll go with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually the secret. You can never go into anything planning what the outcome is going to be, because guaranteed you're wrong. You have to just go into it with an open mind, figure out what is going to come out of it, and then have the ability to latch onto that and grow that. I can, you know, give you 100 examples of things that we thought were going to be one thing that turned out to be something completely different, and only because we were open to them becoming different did it become successful.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's essentially the key to the creative process, is just being open to it. You know, having that vision, but staying open to it the entire time, as you know, an artist would stay open to kind of being inspired by different things.
Mm-hmm. I also think too, it's important to think very, very big, you know, like to think audaciously when you're thinking about the things that you want to do, whether, you know, it's in business or just, you know, your personal goals, because I think a lot of people aim for mediocrity just because they think that they can't do something bigger. You know, I think that actually, I know that like the majority of people don't believe they can do that huge audacious thing that they want to do. So, which means that like the majority of the population is going after these mediocre goals, which means that like it's actually less competition to go for the big things, because most people are going for the middle. And when you do that, you surprise yourself with what you can actually accomplish.
Oh, it's a good lesson to take away. Okay, so I would say just kind of our last question, and we're going to open it up to the audience, is just what's next for you guys, if at all, and maybe the last thing that really inspired you, just to kind of be on the theme.
For us, we are opening a lot of new stores. So we have 2 in San Francisco that we're opening next month in May, and then Atlanta, Dallas, New York by the end of this year. Next year we want to open another dozen or so, and then start expanding internationally. So yeah, we dream big, and we're just going for it. And the last thing that inspired me, I'm really inspired by nature and by being outside. So I went to the farmer's market on Wednesday, the one in Santa Monica. If you have not been, go. It is like the best farmer's market in the world. And I hadn't been in so long that I was just walking down the aisle, and like I smelled everything, like cilantro, oranges, and it was just like one you know, wonderful smell after another, and that just like lit up my brain, and I had the most productive day after that.
Oh, that's amazing.
So what's next for us is, so we sort of oh, sorry. I've like started drinking butter coffee, you know, like bulletproof. And it's like crack, basically. I'm like, it's insane. So that's that. The question was, what are we doing next?
Where are we?
So our new company is called Four Peaks Media Group, and we are building a slate of unscripted and scripted programming, and also feature documentaries. And because we're Canadian, we run stuff either through Canada or through the States, depending on what we think the appetite is for the current market, but also for different ownership there was different ownership laws in Canada. So what's next for us is really just building out our television. You know, like we have a new MTV show coming. We have a scripted comedy in Canada. We're doing the Buried Life feature documentary. We're doing like the next generation of Buried Life, and we have pilots with, you know, HGTV and Pivot and VH1 and stuff like that. So it's just collaborating with people with good ideas to make some really cool TV and you know, continue to just do projects that we think are fun, basically. The last thing that inspired us was a friend of mine had this story, which was like an outrageous party story that we thought it'd be really fun to make into a TV show. And so the show that we have with MTV is called Greatest Party Story Ever. So people tell their most outrageous nights out, like their hangover story to camera, and then it's cut with animation as they tell it. So it's basically like Drunk History, it's sort of, but with like animation. And it's like about the craziest, coolest, funnest, weirdest nights of debauchery. And that all came out of just my buddy's story of, you know, when he went out with his friends. So, you know, inspiration can come out of nowhere. You just gotta kind of be open to it.
Very cool. All right, well, I think we're gonna open it up to any questions from the audience now. So please just raise your hand and we will point to you as far as I can see. Yeah, go for it. Introduce yourself if you can.
Oh, my name's Clay. My name's Clay.
It's just a prop.
Yeah.
Just to make you feel important. Doesn't work.
And my question is for both of you guys. And my question is, what was the greatest hurdle or hurdles that you guys faced in creating your businesses, and how did you guys go about overcoming them? Sorry,
one.
it's
I know,
emotional.
that is a good one.
That's, yeah. I'm crying. There's a lot of hurdles. I would say just persistence. You know, like there's so many times when you feel like you want to give up. There's an easier route. And that's when you need to look for those like little moments of inspiration, like something that is working or something that does fire you up. And that's why I think it's great to work with your buddies and your friends, because they pick you up when you're down, or like someone that you love, you know, because you can look to them for that. So it's harder to do that when you're in a silo on your own. And so, yeah, just that drive to continue to do it when it's like all the shit is hitting the fan and you just don't know if it's going to work, and persistence.
It's a good one. You know, the biggest hurdle for me has been overcoming myself. I can kind of be my own worst enemy. And what I mean by that is I have a tendency to say yes to everything and be like, yeah, let's do that. Let's try that. And all of a sudden I'm working 100 hours a week, killing myself, which is my other flaw, is that I'm a total workaholic. So the hurdle for me has been forcing myself to create work-life balance. You know, my business partner, my fiance, has 3 kids who live with us full time. I barely saw them for like a year, and that was really hard. And I think, especially if you have family or if you have any like that type of situation, you have to know when to make those really tough choices, because yeah, you can't do everything perfectly. You can't like be 100% at work and 100% at family. You got to find some balance. So that's been for me the biggest struggle this year, and I feel like I've made some great strides. A lot of it has come from hiring more people, and a lot of it has come from just making choices of like, no, I'm not going to check email before 11, or no, I'm going to work out every day rather than schedule a meeting at 8. If I have a choice to carve out that time for myself, I now am in the mindset where I do that every time, rather than sacrificing for the sake of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? In the corner over there? Oh, got one. That's easy. Oh, I'm sorry. It was right in front of me.
This one might be a prop. No. I think, Rosie, you touched on this earlier, but were there any points in any of your ventures where you encountered what you saw as potential competitors or people that were doing things like what you were, and how did you deal with that? Was it a competitor that you needed to compete with, or was it an opportunity for collaboration, or sort of what's the way to navigate crowded market spaces, as it were?
Yeah, we chose to enter a really crowded marketplace, but we went in with the mindset of we're going to do it exactly the opposite of how anyone else is doing it on every level. We sell different product, a whole different approach to how we source and distribute, and a whole different approach to packaging, service, the way our stores look and feel. We basically looked at the competition and said, okay, we're going to be like way over here. We have been really lucky, either because I don't know what we're doing, it's kind of hard, and so no one has really figured out how to do it yet. We do see people copying things like our packaging, and what are you going to do? Like, you can't really, yes, you can patent it, but do I really want to waste my time patenting and chasing people who are copying me, or do I want to spend all that energy creating new things and staying 5 steps ahead of them? So that's kind of the mentality I have taken is, yes, we're doing something different, we're really successful, absolutely people are going to copy us, why wouldn't they? But how do we kind of like keep staying ahead of that and keep coming up with new cool things for people to copy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just do it better.
Hi, I'm Liz. Thank you both for coming today and sharing your stories. Just something as business students that we may all kind of think of when we're maybe perhaps toying around an idea of starting a business is, if you are passionate about it, will you lose some of that passion as you pursue your project and kind of face all these hurdles and obstacles? But just from hearing both of you talk, it sounded like your collaboration, and as you move farther in the project, it built your passion more. And I just kind of maybe want to hear you talk more about that, or agree, just for inspiration for all of us.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Great.
I think that it's a kind of what we were talking about earlier about not staying on a fixed course and being open to changing what your direction is as a business, and that's really just to follow your passion and what fires you up, right? Like whether it be people to collaborate or partner with, or a new idea that changes, like this type of packaging or this type of candy would be really, really cool to do in a new way, or and that's kind of what we've stayed open to. Is like, if you look at the timeline of what we've done, we started as a 2-week road trip that was going to be like a 7-minute documentary, went into television, went to like publishing, went back to, did a bunch, like speaking, live shows, that kind of thing, back to a production company, to feature films. Like, it's just continuing to follow that, and it may not be the best for everyone, but for us, that's what's worked.
I'm going to use the analogy that I think the mic is falling off. I think passion is kind of like a relationship. You have to work on it. It's not just going to happen and be awesome and magical all the time. With this, for the moment that I'm in right now, candy is like, I could not imagine doing anything else. But yes, I have days where I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I just can't do it today. I gotta stay home. But then I find things where I see other things that I get passionate about, or things that inspire me, and I think, oh, okay, well, now that I own my own business, I actually have the ability to go take that and bring it into my world. And I'll just give an example. I think 3D printing is amazing. It has like just blown my mind. And the fact that you can now 3D print in sugar is like the coolest thing in the world. So I could very easily just keep taking Sugarfina down the path that we're on now, but I could also make the choice to take this thing that I'm also really inspired by and bring that into my world and make that and kind of add to my passion. So that's kind of what I mean when I think it's like a living, breathing thing, and you can't just expect that it's always going to inspire you. You have to kind of like keep feeling that fire and keep yourself inspired and passionate about it.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, because I don't want this to be misinterpreted from what I last said. When I talk about following, your passion, like these passions that take you in different directions, I don't necessarily mean like going out all these different tangents of things that you think are cool and interesting. Oh, this will be fun, this will be cool, I love this, because you have to do that one thing really, really well. And that's what takes the time and energy. And once you do that, then you can build off of it. Like you were saying, 3D printing and sugar, it's like built off of the core competency of what she's worked on to create that brand. So you can't be jumping around just following things that you think are cool and fun and exciting. You really have to be really, really good at that one thing. And then what's the obvious, tangential path from that?
Or not obvious.
Yeah. Touche.
All right. Well,
Just
I
as
hope
moderate.
that everyone was able to take away a lot from this discussion. I know I have, and I don't think that as business students we should ever think that we are not supposed to have passion as well. And I would, just encourage and challenge all of you to take what Hussein said, as well as Ben and Rosie, and find that thing that makes you excited and that's going to make the world a better place. So thank you all for being here.